Hare Krishna, everyone. So, welcome back. This is Srimad Bhagavatam class, and we are continuing today with chapter 17. So, before we begin, let's just do some invocation prayers. Okay, I've got a Tampura here. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasme Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Nigama kalpatarorgalitam phalam sukha mukadamrita dravya samyutam pibata ragavatam rasam alayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabhaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangre. So Hare Krishna. So thank you everybody for coming. So we are continuing with chapter 17, Punishment and Reward of Kali. So previously we have completed the first part of it. And today, hopefully, we will try to see if we can finish the entire chapter. So what we have done previously, here is some, what we call, subtopics of this chapter. So it begins with Maharaj Parikshit arriving at the scene The scene, what's the scene? The scene is where Kali personified, dressed as a king. Though he is personification of Kali, he's dressed like a representative of religion, and he is attacking the legs of the bull. The bull is only standing on one leg. The three legs have been destroyed, and only one leg is standing on. And the cow is crying, and it looks miserable and shedding tears. So there was a conversation between the bull and the cow. The bull is Dharma, the personification of religion itself, and the cow is Dharani, which is the personification of Mother Earth itself. So while this conversation was ending between the bull and the cow, at that time when the Kali personified was carrying out its nefarious activity, then Parikshit Maharaj arrived with his chariot. So that was the crime scene, the setting. So, and then after seeing what's happening, Maharaj Parikshit challenges Kali. So we covered some points. We mainly talked about, Prabhupada spoke a lot about Goraksha, protection, cow protection. So how we have to understand that cow protection is actually not cow protection, it's actually protecting ourselves only. Because in the end, protecting cows means protecting the earth. Because how do we protect the earth? First, we protect the bull. The bull is the personification of religion. So when religiosity is protected, naturally the earth will also be protected. So then by protecting the earth, the cow and the bull, the earth and religiosity being protected, automatically human welfare and prosperity will come forth. It is protected. So to kill the cow and to kill the bull is basically committing suicide upon the entire human population. So that was described, right? And then we also spoke about how do we establish this though? How do we ensure that the bull is protected and the cow is protected? So there is no other way. The only way to do this is the key is to re-establish Brahminical culture, or in other words, Krishna consciousness in this world. That's the only way people will ever, understanding Krishna consciousness and Brahminical, from Krishna consciousness, it means we develop Brahminical culture, right? And in that's the only way one will give stress to the protection of cows and bulls. There's no other way to do it. So that's why preaching the message of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness is established, so that we preach the message of Bhagavad Gita to everybody and change them to become Krishna conscious. So that was the strategy, the mission statement of Prabhupada. And then we also discussed about true king versus false king. So it's significant that the personification of Kali is taking the disguise as if he is a religious king. He is the lowest of the classes of people, but he is pretending as if he was a great king. So we learned about how, you know, false governments and true leadership and true kings, what is the nature of both. We discussed this to some extent. And the main thing that differentiates between the false king and the true king, of course, besides establishing religiosity and all that, you can see the symptom. The symptom is the false king, he will only protect certain sections of the population. Whereas the true king, he will protect, the definition is Sarva Bhutanam, all living entities within his kingdom deserves his protection. So not only human beings, it also means the animals and everything, right? Due protection. There are different grades of protection allocated according to scripture for each of these different living entities. And in that way, they are given, the highest protection is given to the cows and to the brahmanas. So like that, and human beings in general. Whereas false kings, you will see, they will only protect a certain kind living entities. If human beings is there, but even then also they will protect certain race. If the race also is there, then also they will protect certain class. So if the class is there, then also they will protect certain, a certain group of thoughts of people. So like that, this is the problem with false kings. So after seeing all this, Maharaj Parikshit challenges Kali. Being a true king, he challenges such, what do you call, miscreants. And before he, while he's challenging, at the same time, he also reassures Dharani and Dharma. And then he asks Dharani and Dharma, what is the problem? Why are you in this situation? How is it that I'm the king in this entire world? How is such a situation happening? Please let me know what is causing your problem. So then we heard the wonderful reply from Dharma, the bull. How Dharma says that there are many causes of suffering. He refuses to tell what is the cause, direct cause of suffering. He says, it could be due to many things, ultimately we can understand that it's all stemming from Kali. So he gave, different examples. It could be karma. Some people will say it's karma. Some people will say it is actually providence, destiny, and all that. But eventually it arises from irreligiosity. And we can understand that devotees see the hand of the Lord in happiness and suffering. Now, this same theme will also be carried forth in the second part of this chapter. We will also discuss a little bit more about how devotees see the hand of the Lord in both happiness and suffering. It's not just, that's why, sukha dukkada. So in both, you have to see. Okay, and then the Dharma also says why that it's not easy to ascertain very quickly who is the person responsible. So because in Kali Yuga especially, there are many opinions of various people who will give different reasons, and all of them will not be in conclusion with the Vedic truth. So therefore, he's telling, you are Raja Rishi, Parikshit Maharaj, you are learned and you are guided by the Brahmanas. So you ascertain what's happening and you make the decision. So he leaves the decision to the authority. So in today's sessions, we will continue this verses 21 all the way to 45. So here Maharaj Parikshit, he listens to, after listening, he makes judgment and he prepares to act. And then we will hear about punishment of Kali. And then we will also interestingly hear about the reward of Kali. How is it that Kali gets rewarded? And then it ends with the exemplary governance of Parikshit Maharaj. All right, so let us move on. So verse 21, right? Sutta Goswami says, "Oh, best among the Brahmanas." So he calls him Dvija Satama. That means best amongst the Dvijas. Dvija means the Brahmanas, right? O Emperor Parikshit, thus hearing the personality of religion Dharma speak, he was fully satisfied. So even though Dharma gave such a roundabout answer, right? He didn't directly point, this is the culprit. He didn't tell, but still from his speech, he could understand, Parikshit Maharaj could understand that this is not an ordinary bull. It's and later we will hear what he says about it. So he was fully satisfied, and without mistake or regret, he gave his reply without any, very determinedly, he gave a clear reply. So what he says, Rajo Vacha. So Parikshit Maharaj will say, don't mind if I mute some people, okay? So Rajo Vacha, you who are Vrisha, Rupa, Drik. Vrisha means bull, Rupa. Oh, you who have taken the disguise of a bull, right? Drik means to take the form of a bull. You know Dharmanya. Dharmanya means the conclusion of Dharma, the knowledge and the full conclusion of Dharma. Dharmanya. Nya means stands for Jnana. And he continues, he says, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. So this is one philosophy. And here Parikshit Maharaj says, you are the personification of religion. You know Dharma fully. And what you are talking, I recognize the philosophy of the approach that you are taking. Parikshit Maharaj tells the bull. What is that philosophy? The philosophy says the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. So what does that mean? Prabhupada gives an explanation. He says basically devotees don't like to point fingers at people. This is what it means. So why? Because it is a personification of religion. It's a religious trait. One who is righteous, he tolerates all problems and all injustices upon himself in a very peaceful and calm mood. He's very patient. That's why a devotee is also called patient. Why he tolerates? Because Bhagavad Gita says, right? Sukha dukkada matra sparsastu kaunteya sitoshana sukha dukkada akamapaino nityastam stitik shashva bharata. One has to tolerate the reversals, and just like happiness and distress comes, so in the same way one tolerates them. And why should we do like this? So then after that in the Gita, Krishna continues to say, if one does like that, then liberation is his rightful claim. So such a person becomes qualified to attain liberation. That means he has proven that he is patient, that he is tolerant. So that is the way of the devotee. So therefore, the bull is showing this example. He doesn't directly point five fingers into the Kali, right? He basically he tells that, you know, there are various causes. It could be my karma, it could be this, but ultimately he says it is due to the actual, because nothing, not even a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So it is due to the Lord's desire that I have to go through this situation. That is how a devotee will think. So in this way, but then even that also, it's not exactly true. So we will hear about that later on. Though the Lord is ultimately the cause of all causes, sarva karana karanam, at the same time, there is a but to it. We will hear about the but. But anyway, here we can understand how a devotee should handle reversals, happiness and distress. He doesn't point fingers at people. He doesn't blame people for their mistakes or whatever sufferings that he is going through. So Prabhupada gives an example. He gives just like Jesus Christ. So in the same chapter, previous chapters also, he mentioned about Jesus Christ. How Jesus Christ was framed. He was there was a conspiracy, and then Judas, one of his disciples, went and spoke about him to the Romans, and the Romans came and arrested Jesus, and they tortured Jesus. They actually beat him with stakes. They put and then final punishment is to go and get crucified. It's described by historians that crucifixion is one of the most painful, excruciating, prolonged deaths. You know, it takes, because it takes days. And if you, I've read something on that before, some time ago. It says that, you know, it's quite painful. They will actually nail your feet together, and they'll break your knee bones. So anyway, and then not enough with that, they also put a crown of thorns on Jesus's head. And what did Jesus say? He says, he told the Lord, forgive them, my Lord. They know not what they are doing. So in the same way, this is how devotees have, this is the standard. We have to somehow develop this standard if we want to, you know, basically that's the idea, that's the ideal, the gold standard for devotees to tolerate. So then Parikshit says, you are Dharma Ashi, you are the personification of religion itself, because only such a person can speak such very high-minded philosophy. So it's very high. So Prabhupada says a devotee, on the other hand, has no suffering at all. Why he has no suffering at all, even though there is apparent suffering happening? Because he sees it, everything as a mercy of the Lord. Just like how when the loving parent, for the loving parent, right, the child will see the parent as everything when the child is very young. So then if the parent says some nice things, he also accepts it. When the parent chastises the child, sometimes there's a slapping or basic, not very terrible beatings, but just chastising. So in this way, it is also the mercy of the Lord. And the wise child is able to understand. That's a paradox, isn't it? Wise child. Okay, anyway. So, but the wise child is able to understand that this is simply the mercy of the Lord. Same like Guru. So the chastisement of the Guru is also to be taken as the mercy of the Lord. Guru means very heavy. He doesn't, if a Guru simply goes around flattering everybody, then that is not Guru. So he knows, to the surrendered people, he will not flatter. He will scold because he knows that they can take the scolding. So that is the mercy of the Lord. So similarly, the devotee has to take every reversal and every blessing as both as the mercy of the Lord, the Lord's grace. So a question may be raised. Prabhupada says, why a devotee should refrain from identifying the perpetrator. We may ask, okay, tolerance and all that is very fine, but why should we not point out who is the one doing it, who is the one causing the problem? So then Prabhupada says, although he knows definitely that the Lord is the ultimate doer of everything. So here the bull, if you remember the conversation, the bull didn't even say that it was the Supreme Lord who is causing this. For sure, for certain, he didn't mention it. He implied it, but he did not mention it for certain, right? So if a devotee understands that the ultimate doer is the Supreme Lord, right? So why he doesn't point it directly? So no, one should not pose himself as ignorant of the actual performer. So Prabhupada answers, to answer this doubt, the reply is that the Lord is also not directly responsible. So he is the ultimate cause of all causes. So we have to understand this carefully, right? When we say that he is the Sarva Karana Karanam, that means nothing moves without his sanction, but it is not that he wants it to be that way for the child. Just like how the parent, exactly like this, the parent, sometimes when the child is, stubborn, doesn't want to listen, right? Doesn't follow certain things, he's forced to put the parent in a certain situation to ensure that the child will learn and then come back to be gratified and everything, and ultimately it's for his benefit. For example, let's say the child is undergoing some he's diseased or something. He didn't listen to the parent. The child somehow contracted some disease, and then he has to be isolated or kept in the hospital or whatever. So but it's happening by the decision of the parent. The parent is the one who identifies the situation, the problem, and he's the one who brings the child to the doctor, and he's the one who agrees that the medications are being done for the child, right? So in that sense, you could say that the parent is the cause of everything. The child could say, you are the one who is making me go through this. But at the same time, we have to understand that he's not directly responsible. The directly responsible person is the living entity, the soul, the jiva. Simply by his activities, he invites certain reactions. So, and the Lord has warned. It's not that the Lord did not say what will happen. If you do this, this will happen. If you do that, that will happen. Don't go to the material world. Stay with me in the spiritual world. Everything's wonderful. But we did not listen. So therefore, we go and we do certain activities. The Vedas are given, the scriptures are given. They tell what should be done, what should not be done, but we do not follow. So then we get reactions. So therefore, ourselves are the actual cause of karma, the reactions. The Lord is not responsible for karma, but due to his omnipotency, karma functions as his dictates, right? It works under his supervision. The law itself works under his supervision, but it's not that he is maliciously causing us to go through pain. It's not like that. So Prabhupada says here, for everything, oops, just a moment. For everything is done by his deputed Maya Shakti or material energy. The material energy is always provoking doubts about the supreme authority of the Lord. So that's the job of Maya, to give us doubts, because Maya wants to test, right? The personality of religion knew perfectly well that nothing can take place without the sanction of the Supreme. And still, he was put in doubts by the deluding energy, Maya Shakti, and thus he refrained from mentioning the Supreme Cause. So actually, the bull's reply, Dharma's reply, because he was in proximity with Kali, because Kali was attacking the bull, because religiosity was being attacked by the bull. You can see the state of the bull, hobbling on one leg, urinating and passing dung, and then he was in his extreme fear, and therefore he was also put into illusion temporarily. So all this irreligiosity can even put, Dharma, can put Dharma into illusion, that they do not understand who is the ultimate cause of all causes. So this doubtfulness, Prabhupada says, was due to the contamination of both Kali and the material energy. So devotees understand everything is due to the Supreme Lord. He is the Sarva Karana Karanam. However, how do we see everything? We take everything as his grace. If something wonderful comes, we receive it with gratitude. If something terrible comes, we receive it with patience, and we receive it with the understanding that there is something that I need to learn. There is something that I need to do. This is something which will be beneficial for me in the long run. So we have to have that faith very strongly, and we also have to understand that in such situations, careful consultations has to be taken with the spiritual master or with seniors, so that we can understand what is Dharma and what is not Dharma. So then Sutta Goswami continues. Thus it is concluded that the Lord's, this is Parikshit Maharaj, he'll say, thus it is concluded that the Lord's energies are inconceivable. Here the word agochara is used. Sometimes achintya is also used to refer to the word inconceivable. The Lord's energies are inconceivable. So Maya Shakti is very strong, is deluding. Even the personality of religion is put into illusion. No one can estimate them by mental speculation. Chetasa, that means by mental. Cheta means by the mind. You cannot, with our mind, we cannot imagine the limit of the Lord's inconceivable energies. Neither can it be described by vachas, by speech, word jugglery. It's not possible to fully define this. We will understand it when we go to the spiritual world. So then it continues with 1724. Parikshit Maharaj will say, Tapa saucham daya satyam iti pada krite kritaha adharmamams chaitrayo bhagnaha smaya sangha madaistava. So we can understand, this is a very famous verse. This is what we will use to define the four regulative principles. If you remember, the four regulative principles are, it's based on these pillars. So Dharma is the bull. Dharma is having 4 legs. The bull has 4 legs. But because of Kali, 3 of its legs are cut off. So these 4 legs are Satyam, Saucham, Daya, and Tapa. And Saucham, Daya, and Tapa are destroyed in Kali Yuga. In Satya Yuga, all these 4 legs were there. But in Kali Yuga, only Satyam is standing. So Prabhupada says the principles of religion are not something which is man-made. We cannot manufacture them. It is not some dogma or some kind of formula that we create. Atheists, sometimes they create a certain formula. What is, what is right and what is wrong? No, it has to be based on scripture. And ultimately, in whichever scripture also, it has to be based on these 4 principles: Satyam, truthfulness; Saucham, cleanliness; Daya, mercy; and Tapa, which is austerities. Without these 4, then it is simply a cheating religion. So we have to understand that this is the filter which we will use to define what is true religion and what is not. So then it continues, but it appears that 3 of your legs are broken due to rampant irreligion in the form of pride, lust for women, and intoxication. So I was very it was interesting that Prabhupada, usually we hear that lust is the one that, what do you call, cleanliness is destroyed by illicit sexual activity, right? And what we have, what's the other one? Tapa. Tapa, austerity, is usually destroyed by intoxication. And the third one, daya, meat eating, is usually destroyed. Meat eating destroys mercy. But here, Prabhupada, in the Bhagavatam translation here, pride is mentioned. So pride, lust for women, and intoxication. So that is also very important. Actually, this is not the first place. In other places also, we can hear that Krishna, amongst all the different anarthas in our heart, the one anartha which Krishna cannot tolerate, even in his purest of devotees, is pride. So pride is very, very strong. And it says that a devotee or a brahmana who has pride loses his entire learnings. All his learning, knowledge, sukriti, everything is taken away when he develops pride. So pride is very, very important. If you remember in the Krishna book also, in Bhagavatam, in the Rasa Leela dance, when the gopis were having the Rasa Leela dance, each thought that Krishna was only with me. So when they developed this kind of thinking, it was a very subtle form of pride, though it was a very purified form of pride. Krishna, what he did, immediately he left the gopis. These are gopis, he left them. And later on, there was except for one, Radharani. Radharani was still with Krishna, but later Radharani also had that kind of thinking that, oh, Krishna is only being with me. Even then, Krishna left Radharani. So we can understand there Krishna was showing his, independence. He was showing his Swarat, Supreme Lord, he is Atmaram. But at the same time, he is showing to us that pride is something which he cannot stand. It is a very bad thing. So pride, intoxication, because sometimes people say, pride is intoxicating. So what is more intoxicating than pride? We will say intoxicants like caffeine, tea, and all that. But more than that is pride. Pride is very highly intoxicating. We are proud, we are learned, we are proud that we have, Bhoga Aishwarya. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoga Aishwarya Prashaktanam Taya Praharta Chetasham. So one who has Bhoga and Aishwarya, for them it's very difficult to accept spiritual life. Why? Because of pride mainly. So other things also, knowledge and all these things will come together. So we have to be careful. So it seems that pride, lust for women, and intoxication have destroyed the 3 legs of religiosity, which is Saucham, cleanliness, and that one we know is definitely connected to lust for women. So intoxication and pride is to be seen together, right? It destroys tapa, austerity. And when tapa and saucham is destroyed, then daya is also destroyed. So this is still Dwapara Yuga when this is happening. Kali Yuga is starting. Of course, when Krishna left, Kali Yuga already started, right? So what was destroyed in Dwapara Yuga was mercy, what do you call daya. So Prabhupada says, but to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord is also not very easy. Such surrender is possible by persons of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. So that is the reason Prabhupada established the 4 regulative principles as the basic requirement before we even take initiation. So he makes it a point. One has to come to the Aryan category, because to uphold Satyam, Saucham, Daya, Tapa, it means one is Aryan. One knows the ultimate goal of spiritual life. So one has to be a dedicated defender of these 4 principles. And how do we promise that we will never destroy these 4 principles is by promising that we will not eat meat, we will not indulge in illicit sexual activity, we will not perform gambling, and we will not perform what we call what's the other one? Intoxication. Yeah. So therefore, this is the basic pillar of, and then only surrender can begin. So then we surrender and we take initiation and so forth. First we surrender to the guru, right? Of course, that's a long process. So this is very important point it appears in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada continues, man cannot check all these evils simply by statutory acts and police vigilance. But he can cure the disease of the mind by the proper medicine, namely advocating the principles of Brahminical culture. So I mentioned this already, right? How we can establish religiosity is by teaching Brahminical culture and setting an example of Brahminical culture or devotee culture to the world. So that's why preaching is the #1 welfare activity to all living entities. Simply bodily cleanliness may help by some extent, but cleanliness of the mind is necessary. So it's an important point here, which I'm highlighting, and it is affected by glorifying the Supreme Lord. So cleanliness of the mind, one doesn't even think in the mind sexual, whatever, illicit activities and things like that. But here Prabhupada is making the extra point that true cleanliness of the mind, cheto darpana marjanam, to clean the mirror of the heart. So that is reflected in the cleanliness of the mind. Mind means is the heart, cheto, right? So no one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord. So the Sankirtan or the chanting of the Hare Krishna is the way to clean the mind. So this is a point where Prabhupada sometimes says, one may have so many good qualities, but if he is not chanting Hare Krishna, then you cannot accept him as Aryan, neither can you accept him as having any good quality, because he is not clean in his mind, right? He may be clean in different ways, but that is simply due to the 3 modes. So the 3 modes are always shifting. They are never permanent. They keep changing. So if we depend on the 3 modes and categorize a person as having good quality, that is temporary and erroneous. So one has to, because eventually it's going to fall off. It's not going to remain unless one takes up the spiritual activity of chanting the holy names. So Prabhupada says a godless civilization cannot cleanse the mind because it has no idea of God. And for this simple reason, people under such a civilization cannot have good qualifications if the person is godless, right? However, they may be materially equipped. So we have to digest this as devotees. And this is the conclusion of Bhagavatam as well. And this is what we have to understand. That does not mean that we become proud, because it means that we have to become compassionate to such people. So that is and that is the basis of our preaching. And ultimately, this is for the benefit of all humanity. So then 1725, you are now standing on one leg only, which is your truthfulness, satyam, and you are somehow or other hobbling along. So somehow or other dharma is still existing in Kali Yuga. But quarrel personified, Kali, flourishing by deceit, is also trying to destroy that leg. So even Satyam is being destroyed. Slowly, it is being hacked away. And we can see that, right? 5,000 years later, after Kali's advent, we can see the degradation and the corrosion of truthfulness pillar in our society these days. So many conspiracies are abound. So many, all kinds of lack of truthfulness is being bandied about, especially in the last 2 years. A lot of it is coming to the surface, right? So, and it's going to get worse if things are not going to improve, right? So therefore, this is the problem. So it said that Satyam is the cornerstone of all the other 3 legs. We have Saucham, Daya, and Tapa. But the cornerstone of all this is Satyam alone. So we have a verse from the Mundaka Upanishad which establishes this. Truth alone triumphs. It is the king of all the what do you call dharmic pillars or the dharmic virtues. The rest are also important, right? Without truthfulness, because truthfulness is the cornerstone of austerity, tapa. How can one claim to have tapa without truthfulness? And with tapa, austerity is only one can develop mercy, because one will understand the pain of others. One will begin to see the why would one does austerity, so that one can develop higher understanding, higher thinking. So that mercy is the austerity is the pillar of, it supports mercy. And without mercy, not mercy, tapa is the support of saucham, cleanliness, and then mercy also comes after that. But the main pillar is satyam. So it's being destroyed by Kali. Kali is hacking satyam. So then Parikshit Maharaj continues. The burden of the earth was certainly diminished by the personality of Godhead and by others as well. So if you remember in Mahabharata war, the entire Mahabharata war was enacted so that the burden of the earth was removed. And Krishna came to do that. And others as well. So, there were other great personalities. Like during Krishna's time, there were the Pandavas. So Yudhishthira Maharaj by himself is so virtuous. Arjuna was so virtuous. And in this way, Vidura was there. Bhishma Dev, one of the Mahajans, was there. So like that, there were many virtuous, Vyasadev was there. So many wonderful personalities were there as well, which were all, who were all assisting in the Lord's plan to diminish the burden of the earth. When he was present, all good was performed because of his auspicious footprints. So we discussed this also in previous chapter about Dharani. She will mention these same points. And the same points are now being repeated by Parikshit Maharaj. Now she, the chaste one, Sadhvi. Who is this Sadhvi? Sadhvi is this cow. The cow is the personification of earth. So Parikshit is saying this Sadhvi. Now it's interesting how Sadhvi is translated by Bhagavatam. Sadhu, the female version of Sadhu is Sadhvi. So it said that Sadhvi is translated as chaste. Being unfortunately forsaken by the personality of Godhead, laments her future with tears in her eyes. So Parikshit understands, yes, Krishna is no longer in this material, his footprints are no longer there on this material world. And in this way, earth is forsaken by the Lord. He understands that. But nevertheless, he says, but still, the Pandavas have established a righteous king. Yudhishthira Maharaj was there. And I am there. So I will give you all protection, he assures Dharani. For now, she is being ruled and enjoyed by lower class men. So basically, he's giving a prophecy. Parikshit Maharaj is talking about how Kali Yuga is going to take place. The earth is going to be literally ruled and enjoyed by lower class men, Shudras, or even lower than Shudras. And these Shudras who pose as rulers, Nripa Vyajaha, as rulers and leaders of society. Okay. So Prabhupada says, untrained lower class men or men without ambition to protect the sufferers. So that's a very interesting point Prabhupada raises here. So he says, men without ambition to protect the sufferers. So that has to be a main point. So a lot of people nowadays, leaders, society, the leaders and the kings and the governments, do we think that any of them have an ambition to protect the sufferers or the people? You would find that that would not really be the top 10 reason why they chose to be statesmen or leaders or whatever. It is usually some other reason. So here Prabhupada says the ambition to protect is very, very important. That is what Kshatriya is all about, to protect, right? Kshatriya, the word itself means to protect. So without this ambition to protect, one cannot become a leader, right? So cannot be placed on the seat of an administrator. And in the absence of a suitable king to curb irreligious tendencies, what will happen? So therefore, all these irreligiosities will come. So the solution is educating the people systematically in the teaching of Srimad Bhagavatam will clear up the hazy atmosphere of corruption. So therefore, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj told Prabhupada, no, you cannot wait for the British to leave India. This is emergency. The house is burning. The world is burning. The preaching of the cult of Mahaprabhu has to be the priority, the foremost priority. And Prabhupada took that as his turning point in life, right? And the same has not changed. The same point is now. We cannot say, oh, other things have to be given priority first. No, the preaching of the cult of Mahaprabhu has to be the main priority. That is done, everything will automatically take place. That is that conviction all of us have to have very strongly as followers of Prabhupada and followers of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and the followers of the Parampara system. So then Prabhupada continues, but this does not mean that the leaders of society, the executive heads, the learned and intelligent man, or above all, the devotees of the Lord, it doesn't mean just because we understand that the Lord is the ultimate cause of everything, Sarva Karana Karanam and everything, it doesn't mean that we should sit down tightly and become callous to the reactions of the age of Kali. So we have a role to play, just like Maharaj Parikshit has a role to play, just like Kshatriyas have a role to play, just like Arjuna had a role to play in the Mahabharata war, right? So one cannot say that I have to now, let them do. I will let. It's all by the will of the Lord. So that was what Dhritarashtra was doing. When Duryodhana was doing so many terrible things, and so many people were giving advice to Dhritarashtra in so many occasions. If you read the Mahabharata, you will find Dhritarashtra was given not one advice, not two advice, so many advice against the activities of his sons, so many times, in so many situations. Not one person, Vyasadeva will give, Parasuram will give, Krishna himself will give, so many sages, Vidura will give, Bhishma will give. There were so many new sages were invited to give, words of advice. But each of the time this advice was given, he will only say in the end, oh, in the end, I don't know what to do. In the end, I cannot do anything. What can I do? I'm completely trapped by the affection I have for my children. And then not only that, worse than that, he will come and say, oh, ultimately, this must be the hand of destiny. Oh, providence is so supreme. The hand of destiny, what can I do? The Lord's will must be like this because I cannot change my heart. So therefore, this must be the will of the Lord only. So that is not his role to say, because he is not a Brahmana. A Brahmana can talk like that, right? But he is a Kshatriya, and as a Kshatriya, it's his duty to establish Dharma. So he cannot take that role. So this is adharma. So therefore, Prabhupada says, it doesn't mean we become callous to the reactions of the age of Kali. Just like he gives an example, in the rainy season, certainly there will be profuse rainfall, but that does not mean that men should not take means to protect themselves from the rain, right? It doesn't mean you just, walk around like an animal, whether it rains or not, you can just, even the animals take shelter. So similarly, one has to act, especially when one has the duty, when one is in that position to act. So Maharaj Parikshit was not such a person. He was someone, he is not like Dhritarashtra. He is potent and he is virtuous and he was ready to act. So Maharaj Parikshit, who could fight 1,000 enemies single-handedly, so he's called a Maharatha. Maharataha means one who can fight many thousands of enemies, one single person can fight. Thus pacified the personality of religion and the earth. He pacified Dharma and Dharani, and with determination and with virtuosity in his foresight, he took up his sword. He took up his sharp sword, ready to kill the personality of Kali, who is the cause of all irreligion. So he's called, Kali here is referred to as Kalaye Adharma Hetave, the ultimate cause of all irreligion. Not the ultimate, Kala, basically he's like the basket of all irreligion. All irreligion sits in him. The administrators, so Prabhupada says, the administrators therefore should take the example of Maharaj Parikshit. One cannot be like Dhritarashtra type of administrators who say, oh, what can I do? I'm not going to say anything. I have this role to act, but I'm not going to say anything. It's ultimately, the will of the Lord. One has the role to act. If one is a leader, one is in such a position to make a difference according to Dharma, not according to pride, then one has to do the duty. If he does not do his duty, then sin. He has to suffer the reactions of that sin, even if he is a devotee. Just like how Bhishma had to go through the sin. Of course, Bhishma is Mahajan. He knows that ultimately this has to come to pass. But he's also showing by his example, even if he was a devotee, if he didn't take the role of a Kshatriya to stop, then he would have to die. He'd have to go through the reactions. So Bhishma's example was to show even a devotee is not spared. So one has to perform his duty properly, right? Especially if he is not renounced. So the administrators should not simply pass resolutions for anti-corruptional steps, but they must be ready with sharp swords to kill the persons creating corruptions from the angle of vision of the recognized Shastra. So it has to be based on Shastric evidence, based on Shastric understanding, because only then sin will not come to us. Otherwise, we cannot do it whimsically. So the law of the land in those days was based on the Shastra. Where did the law start from? The Vedic civilization is the cradle of all human civilization, right? And it was based on law, Manu's law, based on scripture. So nowadays, nobody looks at scripture. Of course, the Muslims, they're trying to do, based on their Sharia law and all that. But nevertheless, we also have to follow, ultimately, some form of scriptural law. And the highest amongst all scriptures is based on Tapa, Daya, Saucham, and Satyam. And the king of all religiosity is based on the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then the verse continues. Sutta Goswami, he narrates, when the personality of Kali understood that the king was willing to kill him, he at once abandoned the dress of a king and under pressure of bhaya, of fear, completely surrendered to him, bowing his head. So Kali knows, oh, this is Parikshit, this is a great personality. Even the Devas cannot face against this Parikshit, not only because he's powerful, but because even more than he's powerful militarily, he's extremely powerful virtuously. He's just like Yudhishthira Maharaj. It's mentioned in the Mahabharata that Yudhishthira Maharaj could simply burn all the entire army simply by his glance if he had wanted to, because he was virtuosity personified. That was the power of his virtuosity. Just like how Gandhari had so much of power that she could, render invincibility to Duryodhana simply by her austerities. So how much more so is Yudhishthira Maharaj, who was virtuosity personified, Dharma personified. So, but still, virtuous people will never use their power in such a way. Gandhari did use her power in support of Adharma to protect her Duryodhana. But Yudhishthira Maharaj never even thought that way. So the Kauravas didn't even have the fear. The Dhritarashtra had the fear. He mentions that in the Mahabharata. There are verses where he actually was afraid of Yudhishthira Maharaj. He will burn the entire people with his glance. But they were so confident that Yudhishthira Maharaj will never do that because he is so wedded to virtue. So this is the type of devotees, the standard of devotees. So Parikshit, Kali, when he saw Parikshit, he was extremely fearful. I cannot hide from this person. Let me give up this guise of a king. And he revealed himself for what he truly was, a fifth class personality, not fit to be a king. He gave up his guise out of respect and fear. So then Prabhupada gives a purport. In the age of Kali, there are so many pretenders dressed and posed like administrators or executive heads, but their real identity is disclosed when there is a real strong, virtuous leader to challenge them, right? But their real identity is disclosed when they are challenged by a real Kshatriya who is virtuous. So that is the problem with Kali Yuga at the moment. Very few are there. But you can see something similar like that may be happening in India, where when a virtuous leader comes, all kinds of things are exposed. So we can see. So hopefully there will be such, not only in the country, but in every situation where leadership is required. So then 1730, Sutta Goswami continues, Maharaj Parikshit, who was qualified to accept surrender and worthy of being sung in history, Slokaya. So as soon as Kali surrendered to Maharaj Parikshit, Maharaj Parikshit, who is one of the greatest of Kshatriyas, what did he do? He did not kill the poor, surrendered and fallen Kali, but smiled compassionately, for he was Kripaya Dina Vatsalaha. He was mercy to the, Kripaya means mercy to the Dina, the fallen, Vatsala, the most fallen of souls. So when Kali, understanding that this is his only way, Kali is very devious, Kali is very intelligent. He knows that this is the only way I can escape. When the enemy is too strong, I need to completely surrender. He has no honor, right? He has no scruples. He just surrenders. But Parikshit Maharaj, being a virtuous king, following the code of the Kshatriya, he has to forgive. He has to what do you call, not forgive. He has to what do you call, allow the person who has surrendered to keep his life. So Prabhupada says, no, oh, sorry. Oh, okay. So, and he was smiling because, why he was smiling? Why Parikshit was smiling? Prabhupada gives the reason. He was smiling because the artificially dressed Kali had finally disclosed his identity as a lower class man. He's satisfied that this person has shown that he is not really a king. And he was also thinking how ironic it was that although no one was saved from his sharp sword when he desired to kill, the poor lower class Kali was spared. Now, amongst all the people that Parikshit Maharaj had killed, no one was more worthy of being killed than this Kali. And Parikshit Maharaj, once he decides to kill someone, that person never escapes with his life. So, but the people Parikshit Maharaj had fought so far were all Kshatriyas, and they will never surrender. But it's ironic that the person most necessary to be killed was Kali, but he could not kill Kali because Kali had surrendered. And keeping to his vow as a Kshatriya, he had to spare Kali. So the king thus said, we have inherited the fame of Gudakesha. Gudakesha is Arjuna. And Arjuna is famous for sparing people. He spared Ashwatthama, right? If you remember how Ashwatthama was spared by Arjuna. When even Krishna was telling Arjuna to kill Ashwatthama, but Arjuna spared Ashwatthama. So Parikshit was saying, I have inherited the fame of Gudakesha. Therefore, since you have surrendered yourself with folded hands, you need not fear for your life. So then all of us in Kali Yuga, we will be telling, Ayo, Parikshit, if only you had killed the Kali Yuga, we won't have to suffer here. So that's not correct, because first of all, it is the Lord's will that this situation happens in earth. And secondly, if we didn't have to suffer, we wouldn't have been born in Kali Yuga in the first place. We would have been born in Satya Yuga, in another universe, right? It's because we deserve all these things we are born in this Kali Yuga. So we have to understand all that. But you cannot remain in my kingdom. So the king said, though I spare you, but I am still the king in this kingdom. As long as I live and my kingdom is flourishing, you cannot remain. So this is the activity of the real statesman. So therefore he says, if the personality of Kali, irreligion, is allowed to act as a Naradeva. Naradeva means a man lord, like a Deva lord. So this is a reference to a king. A king is known as the representative of the Lord. So Naradeva. So if a personality, someone like a low-class person like this Kali, is allowed to act as a king or an executive head, certainly adharma will follow and will conquer everyone. So that's what's exactly happening nowadays, because we no longer have Parikshit Maharaj or his type of descendants. But it is basically the plan of the Lord to propagate Kali, so that, you know, to make it, to squeeze everyone hard, and then at the same time introduce chanting of the Hare Krishna. The easiest method is given, so we can quickly take advantage of this situation and go back to Godhead. So that's the plan. It's like a sail. Kali Yuga is actually like a sail. So he said that even the Devas desire to take birth in Kali Yuga simply because of the wonderful benediction of the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So what kind of adharma will abound if we have heads of states like this, or heads of leaders like this? Lobha, the first quality, will be greed. That will be their main number one motivation. Greed. Not to, remember, earlier we mentioned what should be the ambition of such a person. The ambition should be to protect. So here we don't see that here. Greed is the main ambition. Second ambition, second quality will be falsehood. To attain their greed as their ambition, they will take shelter of falsehood. And they will rob. They will not care who they take the things from. They will rob from everyone. Robbery. And while doing this, they will be incivility, anaryam, without any kind of good qualities, uncivilized. Treachery, they wouldn't think twice about betraying their own friends or people who have supported them. They have no such thing as gratitude in their dictionary. Misfortune, they are full, every activity that they will do will only bring about misfortune to themselves and to everyone, especially. Cheating, so this is their quarrel, and ultimately they will quarrel amongst themselves only. And full of vanity, damba, pride. So it's like two parts, it's two sandwiches, lobha and vanity. It's sandwiching all the other qualities of adharma. So therefore, O Adharma Bandhu, O friend of Adharma, Parikshit Maharaj is talking to Kali now. He's saying, oh, you are Adharma Bandhu. You do not deserve to remain in a place where experts perform sacrifices according to Dharmena Satyena, according to Dharma and according to Satyam. So you do not deserve to remain in such a place, because you are very dangerous. You can corrupt. And why do they do these sacrifices? For the satisfaction of Yajna Ishwaram, the Lord of sacrifices. So sacrifice here means fire sacrifice. In Kali Yuga, it is Sankirtan. And for what purpose we do this sacrifice? We do it for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, not for any other reason. We don't do it to please people. We don't do it to make people become, for whatever reasons. It's not to. It's simply for one reason, to please the Supreme Lord. By doing that, automatically everything else will come into place. So we have to understand that that should be our goal. In all sacrificial ceremonies, although sometimes a demigod is worshipped, Harir Bhagavan Ijyamanais. The soul of all worshipable deities is Harir Bhagavan. He is the main personality to be worshipped in all yagyas. So Bhagavatam clearly defines that. Here is the statement which says that the Lord of all yagyas, the beneficiary of all yagyas is the Supreme Lord, Hari. So in Bhagavad Gita also there is a verse, right? Factual sacrifice means to satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is known as Yajna, 425. Because he is the super soul of everyone. And why is this mentioned? Because it is by the presence of the super soul that the living entity is able to satisfy his desires. You know, we have this body. Why the body works? Because the super soul is there. If the super soul was not there, nothing would work in our body. We cannot satisfy our senses. So why the atoms work in such a way? The super soul is there in atoms also. Why everything works in the way? Why the elements work in the way? Because the super soul is there in everything. So therefore, we have to be thankful. So therefore, the sacrifices are done for the Lord, who is the what do you call, the focus of the super soul. Okay, and he exists both anta and bahi, like the air. It's mentioned, you know, the super soul is in between, inside every atom, and in between the space between atoms. So here it's mentioned anta and bahi, inside and outside of everything, just like the air permeates everything. So therefore, he is the Lord of sacrifice. Thus it is he only who awards all welfare to the worshipper through the agency of the devatas. So he doesn't do it directly. He does it through his shaktis, maya, and he does it through the agency of his devatas. So therefore, he's not the direct cause. He is the ultimate cause. And we are we are the ones who decide the type of causes based on our decisions. So Prabhupada says, to propagate the systematic transcendental knowledge of devotional service is the greatest mercy that one can show in this world. Because this yagya, we cannot do this kind of yagyas nowadays. So the ultimate yagya for Kali Yuga is Sankirtan. So therefore, to propagate this kind of knowledge of Sankirtan, of devotional service to the Lord, to understand that we have to perform yagya for the satisfaction of the Lord, and in this way we will get all happiness in this life and in the next, right? So to give this knowledge to others, to bring them somehow into this, that is really the greatest mercy that one can show in the world. And then to ensure that this is done, Prabhupada gives another statement, spending 50% of our income for the service of the Lord or for the propagation of spiritual knowledge in society by way of the Sankirtan Yagya is the maximum display of human mercy. So this is a very interesting and pertinent point, which all of Prabhupada's family has to be very convinced about. We have to understand that this is the ultimate prime benediction. It's mentioned in the Sikshashtakam, prime benediction of humanity, right? What's that word? I forgot that statement. It's the first verse, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. That particular is the prime benediction of all humanity. So it's the ultimate sacrifice, ultimate welfare. So Sri Sutta Goswami says, the personality of Kali, thus being ordered by Maharaj Parikshit, began to tremble in fear. Seeing the king before him like Yamaraj, ready to kill him, Kali spoke to the king as follows. O Sarvabhauma, Lord of the earth, Kali now talks to the Parikshit. Though I may live anywhere and everywhere under your order, I shall but see you with bow and arrows wherever I look. So this great Kali is quivering in fear, and he's telling Parikshit, everywhere I go, I will only see your bow and your arrow. Where am I going to live in your kingdom? So I cannot stay. There is nowhere within this world I can stay whilst you are alive. So then he says, therefore, O Dharma Britam Shrestha, he is referring to Parikshit as chief amongst the protectors of religion. Why he's saying that? He's saying that because the chief amongst the protectors of religion, he's saying that to Parikshit because Parikshit didn't kill him, because he refrained from killing a surrendered person. So that's why he's calling him as chief. And the most deserving person to be killed is Kali, but he did not kill because he's following the principle of Kshatriya code, which said that one who surrenders, one has to allow, one cannot kill. So therefore he's referring to him as Dharma Britam Shrestha. Please fix some place for me where I can live permanently under the protection of your government. So he wants a permanent place to live. So remember, a king gives protection to Sarva Bhutanam, everyone who has taken shelter. So even Kali, who had taken shelter, deserves protection, because it is the will of the Lord, right? It has to take place. So Kali was given this intelligence by the Lord. Otherwise, Kali would have been killed. So this intelligence was given by the Lord to Kali so that he can, be protected. So Prabhupada is saying a devotee is so wonderful that he is giving protection like this. Can we just imagine what sort of protection is given by the personality of Godhead to the person who surrenders unto him, right? To someone like Kali, Parikshit gave protection. And to someone like Jadai, what do you call? Jagai and Madai. Jagai and Madai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave protection, right? So like that, we also, if we can only surrender, because Jagai, Nityananda spoke on behalf, the Guru intervened, and Madai was able to surrender to Nityananda immediately. After that, Madai realized his mistake, and he was willing to surrender on the spot. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spared him. So Prabhupada is saying, can we just imagine how much of protection we will get if we only surrender to the Lord? Not as an enemy. This is an enemy who surrendered. If we were a devoted servitor and we tried to surrender, how much the Lord will reciprocate with us. So a few more verses to go. Sorry, I'm taking a bit more time. If I can get another 5 to 10 minutes, I can finish it. So Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where, number 1, gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. So Maharaj Parikshit was also very intelligent. So he knows that there is no such place within this world, right? So Kali wants to hide somewhere. All right, in my kingdom, I will let him hide in these places. So Prabhupada said, but such activities are factually adharma. So, in this gambling, prostitution, and animal slaughter and all, just because Bhagavatam allows such, it is mentioning here that these things are allowed for Kali to stay, it doesn't mean that this is dharma. It is adharma. And similarly, in the Vedas also, there are always certain types of people who will take shelter of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter. So there will always be such people in this world. So, and if they take shelter, where do they go? So therefore, these places are a necessary evil, but they are never to be understood as dharma, simply because the Vedas allow. So similarly, in the Vedas, like for example, there is something called Shautramani Yajna. In this Yajna, the result of this Yajna is after performing this Yajna, they can actually drink intoxicants. There will be wine and things like that, which is part of this Yajna. And after that, they can indulge in this drinking. But they cannot drink otherwise. They have to do this Yajna, then only they can do this drinking. So it's called Shautramani Yajna. It's mentioned in the scriptures. And then there is also something like Pali, sacrifice, animal sacrifice, like to Kali, to the goddess Kali. one performs animal sacrifice, right? It is mentioned during Amavasya. Today is Amavasya, Adi Amavasya. So in this Amavasya period, one can perform animal sacrifice by a certain ritual, and then after that one can eat that animal. So in some temples, like in there are some temples and all, they will actually sacrifice a goat, and they will have a feast amongst in that temple. So these things are also there in some of the scriptures. So and that does not mean that these things are dharma just because the scriptures enjoin it. It has to be understood that this is necessary for the certain type of people. So Prabhupada says here, but such activities are factually adharma and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for the regulation, for regulating the necessary adharma gradually towards the path of dharma. So at least by gradually restraining them, and it's never allowed full-fledged, it's never supported by the state. This is one important point. Okay, so, and Prabhupada also says, just like not everybody is in the mode of goodness. There are some people in the mode of ignorance. So for the people in the mode of ignorance, you give them mode of goodness injunctions, they will see this as poison. They cannot take it. So therefore, these things are meant for them. But it's never dharma. So the personality of Kali asked for something more. So why he asked for something more? He continued to beg. He told Parikshit Maharaj, there is nowhere in your kingdom, Parikshit Maharaj, where these things are taking place. Everybody is so virtuous. So where do I go? Where do I stay permanently? So then he begged for more, and the king gave him permission to live where there is gold. Because where there is gold, there is also falsity, intoxication, lust, and envy. So all these places will be where gold is being hoarded. So Prabhupada says, thus the age of Kali began with gold standardization. So it's nice that he mentions like that. Witty. So so goal standardization. So Prabhupada, if you read the purport to this verse, he talks a little bit about gold standardization. So he says that gold standard currency is not really, it's not good, because we are using paper currencies based on gold reserves. But actually, it is not really reflecting the real reserves that we have, right? Sudhir Prabhu can speak more about such matters. But anyway, Prabhupada is mentioning here that it is basically what is called prostitution of the economy. Prabhupada's term, he says that the economy is being like prostitution of the economy, where actually the gold is not really reflecting the currency. So it is false. So everything is being undervalued eventually, right? The price of commodities become artificially inflated and everything. So it is not really reflecting the actual prosperity of a country. So he's saying these problems can be solved when there is actual gold currency in the form of gold coins. So previously, in Vedic times, gold coins was used. Silver, precious metals like gold, silver, the actual standard of the reserve was being used as currency. So when this is done, this will solve this will check Kali being in the gold. So then Sutta Goswami continues, thus the personality of Kali, by the directions of Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Uttara, was allowed to live in those Panchasthanam. So Panchasthanam, 5 places. What are these 5 places? Meat eating, gambling, intoxication, illicit sexual activity, and the 5th one is gold hoarding, right? So gold or wealth hoarding. So Prabhupada gives a solution. We should not hoard wealth. We should give it away for the benefit of ISKCON. He boldly mentions, so that we can use it for the propagation of teaching all this to the entire world. Therefore, whoever desires progressive well-being, especially kings, religionists, public leaders, gurus, which include brahmanas and sannyasis, should never come in contact with the four irreligious principles. So notice he does not mention gold, though the Panchasthanam was mentioned in the previous verse. In the 41, he mentions the four things. The four things, which are the gambling, intoxication, and all that, there is no compromise, never to be accepted. But gold, there can be compromise. Gold can be used by these people, the kings, religionists, public leaders, and gurus, and brahmanas, and sannyasis, because they know exactly how to use gold properly. Just like how Parikshit Maharaj knows exactly how to use wealth, just like how Yudhishthira Maharaj knew how to use wealth, just like how Prabhupada knows how to use wealth properly in the propagation of spiritual learning. Just like how we give wealth to Guru, right? So in the same way, we purify our earnings and we make the best benefit, we make the best usage of this money or gold. Therefore, and then he gives an example here. Thereafter, the king re-established the lost legs of the personality of religion. So after this is done, using the gold and everything, all the wealth, right? Parikshit Maharaj is king. He re-established the legs, the three lost legs of the bull. So that's the first thing to do. The king or the leader has to use the resources to re-establish dharma. So that is what Prabhupada is trying to do with ISKCON. To use ISKCON to re-establish dharma in the population, right? So Prabhupada says, but under the guidance of a proper king or a public leader or a brahmana or a sannyasi, the same gold can be properly utilized to re-establish the lost legs, right? So that is the first order. So once that is done, and by encouraging activities, he sufficiently improved the condition of the earth. So what are these activities? Goraksha, protection of the cow, protection of the bull, and establishing the ultimate dharma, which is to go back to Godhead. Once this kind of learning and understanding is being propagated to make everybody become a devotee, then automatically the earth will flourish, just like when Yudhishthira Maharaj was there, just like when Ramachandra was there, just like when Parikshit Maharaj was there, the earth flourished. So the Mahabhaga Raja Rishi, the greatly fortunate Mahabhaga Raja Rishi Parikshit, who was entrusted with the kingdom of Hastinapur by Maharaj Yudhishthira when he desired to retire to the forest. So this is the Maharaj Parikshit who took over the entire kingdom, not only of Hastinapura. Hastinapura is only the capital. He took over stewardship of the entire world. He's now ruling the world with great success, befitting the deeds of the kings of the Kuru dynasty. So this is the glory of Parikshit Maharaj, such a great personality. Abhimanyu Sutta, that's another name for Parikshit Maharaj, son of Abhimanyu, is so experienced. Saunaka Rishi is telling, Sutta Goswami is telling to Saunaka Rishi. He's ending his narration. This is the last verse of this chapter. He's so experienced that by dint of his expert administration and patronage, it has been possible for you to perform a sacrifice such as this. So what is he saying? He's referring to the sacrifice being taking place in the Naimisharanya forest. In the Naimisharanya forest, all the sages have assembled to perform a 1,000-year-old sacrifice to halt the progress of Kali, just to halt the progress of Kali. But they find that the sacrifice is backfiring. They are becoming blackened and everything, but Kali is still, gaining momentum. So here, Saunaka Rishi is telling, Sutta Goswami is telling Saunaka Rishi, such a great personality is this Raja Rishi Parikshit, that he has checked Kali, and at the same time he's governing the earth so wonderfully that he's able to ensure that you are able to perform such wonderful sacrifices. These sacrifices are not cheap to perform. They need expert guidance, they need expert organization, they need wealth, right? All these things need to be there, and Brahmanas cannot do all these things. They need the king to do all these things, to set up. So Prabhupada finally gives a conclusion. The Brahmanas and the sannyasis are expert in the spiritual advancement of society. So they know what to do to advance the society. And what is the role of the Kshatriyas or the administrators? They are expert in the material peace and prosperity of human society. So they know what to do. They know that to serve the Brahmanas and to serve the cow is to actually make way for human prosperity. So by the expertise of Maharaj Parikshit, the sages of the Naimisharanya forest were able to perform such sacrifices. So both of them are the pillars of all happiness. The Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas are the pillars of all happiness, and therefore they are meant for full cooperation for common welfare. Because they didn't cooperate, right? Parashuram came, Krishna came as Parashuram and killed all these errant Kshatriyas. That was in the earlier ages. But now the Brahmanas are going to lose their capability. When Parikshit becomes cursed by the Shringi, the son of the Brahmana, then he loses, the Brahmanas will lose their capability. So that's when Kali will fully take control. Okay, so with that we end our narration for chapter 17. 5 minutes. So Maharaj Parikshit makes judgment and prepares to act. We've heard that, right? He hears and then he acts. Punishment of Kali, 5 minutes. Punishment of Kali, and we heard also the reward of Kali. The reward of Kali here refers to where Kali was allowed to stay. And we also heard about the exemplary governance of Maharaj Parikshit. So with that, we'd like to end. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki. So any questions from anybody?
Nice class, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol. So then we will end if there are no other questions. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.